Sydney Sutherland didn't live in a city full of strangers. She lived in Tuckerman, Arkansas, a town of fewer than 2,000 people. A place where people wave from their porches and leave their doors unlocked. Where your neighbors know your name. And where, on a warm Wednesday afternoon, Sydney went for a run and never came home. She vanished in broad daylight. On a road she'd traveled 100 times before. Less than 3 miles from her front door. This is not the story of a random predator. This is the story of familiar evil, the kind that lives right next door. Sydney was 25. A nurse. Vibrant. Funny. She loved TikTok, long runs, country sunsets. On August 19th, she sent a snap at 2:37 p.m. By 3:15 p.m., she was gone. Not late. Not missing overnight. Gone. Her family called police when she didn't return by 5. The sun dipped. Panic rose. By nightfall, the whole county was searching. ATVs. Drones. Helicopters. Hundreds of volunteers. They scoured the fields. The roads. The ditches. Nothing. Not a shoe. Not a phone. Not a trace. Until day 2, when a small piece of technology changed everything. Sydney ran the same route most days. She shared it on social media. Her family tracked her on the Find My iPhone app. And that app told them she stopped moving at 3:07 p.m. Right on County Road 41. Right near an open stretch of farmland. Right near someone she knew. She felt safe there. She'd waved to the tractors. She knew those guys. We all did. That's what made it worse. Sydney wasn't running into danger. She was running through it. At first, no one suspected Quake Llewellyn. He was 28. Grew up in Tuckerman. Went to school with Sydney. Worked his family's land. He'd even joined the search. Told people he was just trying to help. But investigators noticed something strange. He had no alibi. And when they checked cell tower pings, his phone and Sydney's were in the same field at the same time. We started seeing overlaps between their devices, and it got dark real quick. They brought Quake in for questioning. He sat calm. Almost bored. Then he dropped a story that shocked everyone. Quake claimed he'd accidentally hit Sydney with his truck while she was running. Said he panicked. Said he loaded her into the truck bed. Drove to a field. And buried her. But the autopsy? It told a different story. Sydney hadn't been hit by a truck. There were no injuries consistent with a collision. Instead, it showed signs of blunt force trauma to the head. Manual injuries. Intentional violence. This wasn't panic. This was predation. Quake wasn't a stranger. He'd known Sydney since they were kids. Their families knew each other. He followed her on Snapchat. Watched her stories. Knew her schedule. And when he saw her jogging alone that afternoon, he made a choice. Not a flash decision. A calculated move. Just checking in, sweet girl. Let me know when you're home. She never called back. By the time her mom left that message, Sydney was already gone. But here's where it gets strange. Quake's story kept changing. First, he hit her. Then, he found her in the road. Then, he blacked out and didn't remember anything. But he remembered enough to dig a shallow grave. To return the next day and bury her deeper. To wash his truck. To go back to work. He showed no emotion. None. Just emptiness. His phone history? Showed searches for missing jogger, cadaver decomposition, and, most chilling, can they find DNA in dirt? This wasn't a man in shock. This was a man in control. A man who knew the land. Knew the silence. Knew he'd be the last person anyone suspected. When the truth came out, the town shattered. Because it wasn't a monster from far away. It was one of their own. A face at the gas station. A wave from a tractor. Someone who smiled at her before killing her. And then, just when the case seemed solved, a new witness came forward. A woman from the next county. She said Quake wasn't alone that day. Said she saw another man near the field hours before the police arrived. A man she recognized. A man with a history. And when she said his name, investigators froze. Because this man was never interviewed. Never listed in the search logs. Never mentioned in Quake's confession. So why didn't Quake mention him? Was he covering for someone? Was he manipulated? Or was he just the first to break? The question is no longer who killed Sydney Sutherland. It's how many people knew. It was a Sunday. A quiet Arkansas morning. Blue sky. Fresh air. Nothing out of the ordinary. But by nightfall, Sydney Sutherland had vanished. And what happened in between shattered the illusion of safety forever. At 7:15 p.m., the Jackson County Sheriff's Office issued a missing person alert. 25-year-old Sydney Sutherland. Blonde. Athletic. Beloved by everyone. Last seen jogging along County Road 41. Broad daylight. A rural road she'd run dozens of times. But this time, she didn't come back. In towns like this, people don't lock their doors. Everyone waves. Everyone knows everyone. You don't disappear here. Or so they thought. Mom, tearfully reading Sydney's last text. Going on a quick run before dinner, red hot hash. That was at 2:36 p.m. She never read my reply. Her phone's last ping was near farmland she passed every day. No distress call. No signs of a struggle. Just silence. Deputies used her phone data to pinpoint her last known location. A stretch of road flanked by wide cotton fields. No cover. No witnesses. Unless someone was watching. Sydney was sunshine. She worked in a clinic, adored her dogs, ran every morning. She had dreams. She had plans. She had a routine. That's what made what happened next so chilling. Friend 1, voice cracking. She always said hello to strangers. That's just who she was. Friend 2. We were planning a girls' trip. She was talking about saving up for a house. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story shocked you, like and subscribe to True Crime Series for more cases that expose the darkest corners of human nature. They didn't know it yet, but her kindness was seen and followed. The town mobilized fast. Hundreds showed up with ATVs, horses, dogs, drones. They combed ditches, creeks, barns. Every inch of Jackson County was walked, driven, flown over. The sheriff gave press briefings. We're hopeful, he said. This community doesn't quit. But under that hope, something darker stirred. Somewhere between her driveway and the curve at 41, Sydney disappeared. Without a trace. As if the earth opened and swallowed her whole. Locals started locking doors. Women stopped running alone. The town held its breath. Then came the shock. You grow up around farms like these, and you learn to respect the men who work them. Strong. Private. Often solitary. But in Jackson County, that silence became a shield. And someone hid behind it. Quake Llewellyn. 28, farmer. Married. Arrested for capital murder. People gasped. He was local. Familiar. Went to school with Sydney. Saw her around town. Knew her face. Knew her route. But nobody knew what he was hiding. Investigators retraced her final steps. They found her running shoes discarded in a ditch. Her watch, shattered. Her body, buried in a shallow grave on Quake's land. He'd driven by search parties. He even posted online prayers. All while hiding what he'd done. Social media had turned Sydney into a symbol. A missing girl in a peaceful town. But now, she was proof of betrayal. Proof that evil doesn't come with warning signs. Sometimes, it smiles at you in the grocery store. The community lit candles. But they also started asking questions. Why didn't we see it? How could he do this? How many women had almost been her? I saw her running. I turned around. Hit her with the truck. Loaded her up. No emotion. No remorse. He confessed, but nothing about it made sense. Because Sydney's injuries didn't match his story. There was no impact trauma from a truck. No broken bones. But there were signs of a prolonged struggle. So now investigators were asking, was the hit and run just a cover? Sydney's death cracked something open. Across Arkansas, women came forward. Stories of being followed. Harassed. Ignored. The town could no longer claim it was safe. Not after this. But just as things started to settle, everything turned upside down again. 6 months after Quake's arrest, a sealed court document leaked. It wasn't just a murder investigation anymore. A second woman's name appeared. Another missing case. From 2 years earlier. Never solved. Never connected. Until now. Jennifer Reese. 23, last seen in the next county over. She was also blonde. Also a jogger. Also vanished near farmland. Her body? Never found. But now, a chilling link tied her to Quake's property. The report mentioned soil samples, DNA partial matches, a piece of jewelry buried in the same field where Sydney was found. Jennifer's parents confirmed it. It was hers. She wore it every day. Quake had denied knowing Jennifer, said he'd never seen her. But his old phone, recovered from a ditch, told a different story. GPS logs showed him near Jennifer's last known location. 3 times. In the same week. What began as one girl's tragic murder may now be something far bigger. A pattern. A predator. Hiding in plain sight. The media picked it up. The town went quiet. People who once defended Quake started whispering. What if this wasn't an accident? What if it never was? One detective said it best. The scariest monsters don't come from the woods. They come from inside your own fence line. And just when they thought they had all the answers, Sydney's phone was reactivated. 10 months later. From a different state. Who turned it on? And what else have they been hiding? It started like any other summer afternoon. August 19, 2020. 3 p.m. Grubbs, Arkansas. Sydney Sutherland, 25 years old, laced up her running shoes. She posted earlier that morning. Happy. Energized. Her bright smile lit up the screen. She texted her boyfriend. Told him she was going for a jog near County Road 41. That was the last time anyone heard from her. Then, silence. No texts. No calls. No movement on social media. Her phone stopped responding. Her Apple Watch went dark. A vibrant young woman, beloved by her family, vanished in the middle of the day, on a stretch of road she'd run countless times. How does someone disappear on their home turf? This wasn't a crime-ridden city. This was farmland. 2-lane roads. Familiar faces. But that evening, Sydney didn't come home. Panic took hold. Her mother called everyone she could. By nightfall, the word was out. Sydney was missing. When police pulled her cell phone records, one detail stood out. Her devices had last pinged around 3:31 p.m. Just a few miles from her house. Near a remote stretch of farm road. Officers raced to the area. Locals joined the search. Helicopters buzzed overhead. ATVs combed the fields. Friends retraced her route. It felt impossible. She wasn't hiking in a national park. She was on a routine jog through farmland she knew like the back of her hand. They found her phone near the side of the road. It had been tossed, shattered. But there was no sign of her. The longer the silence stretched, the darker the theories became. Abduction? Accident? Something else? And then, a name entered the story. Quake Llewellyn. Local farmer. 28 years old. Sydney knew him. Went to high school with him. People described him as quiet. Awkward. Nothing unusual. He lived nearby. Worked the field Sydney ran past every day. And he claimed to have seen her. At first, Quake said he saw her jogging, waved, and kept going. But police weren't satisfied. They pulled his GPS data. What they found changed everything. On August 19th, Quake's movements matched Sydney's last known location. He had driven past her, then circled back. Then, he went off-road. Into a private field, miles away from where he said he'd gone. That field? Just a few hundred yards from where Sydney's body would later be found. Quake was arrested on August 21st. Shock exploded across Jackson County. He wasn't a stranger lurking in the shadows. He was one of their own. A fifth-generation farmer. A former classmate. A face they'd all seen at the gas station, the grocery store. But the real horror was still to come. Because when Quake started talking, the story turned darker than anyone imagined. Quake confessed. Coldly. Methodically. He saw her running. Turned around. Drove up behind her. Struck her with his truck. Sydney, likely disoriented or unconscious, was pulled into his vehicle. He drove to a field, out of sight. Assaulted her. Then he killed her. Then, he buried her in a shallow grave on his family's land. His tone? Flat. Detached. No signs of rage. No excuses. Just, calculated horror. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a decision. Planned. Executed. Covered up. The kind of predator that doesn't fit the Hollywood mold. He didn't stalk her online. He didn't hide in the bushes. He waited. For the right moment. On a hot August day. When no one would notice her missing for hours. When Sydney's family heard the details, they broke. Her mother said, "I felt her leave this world. I just knew." The entire community reeled. Because now, they weren't just grieving. They were asking, how did we not see him for what he was? But then, investigators uncovered something they hadn't expected. A gap in Quake's timeline. Between when he struck Sydney, and when he buried her, there was a nearly 2-hour window unaccounted for. He told police he acted alone. That it all happened quickly. But digital forensics said otherwise. His truck's onboard GPS and phone logs showed a detour to a second location. Not a field. Not a road. A small, vacant trailer, owned by his cousin. Police checked it, and what they found didn't match his confession. Fibers. A broken watch. A shoe. Sydney's shoe. Her other one had been found miles away. So what was the truth? Had he taken her there first? Had someone helped him? And why didn't he mention it? The confession suddenly felt strategic. Controlled. Like a version of the story crafted to end the questions. But now, there were more than ever. And then came the letters. 2 women, unrelated to each other, contacted the sheriff's office. Both had gone on dates with Quake in the past year. Both described similar patterns, strange questions, sudden aggression, an obsession with dominance. Neither had reported him. It didn't seem serious, one said. Just uncomfortable. But now, rereading their texts, one said, it was all right there. And then, the bombshell. A third woman came forward. Not from Arkansas. From Missouri. She claimed Quake had followed her after a gas station encounter in 2018. He drove behind her for 17 miles. She filed a report at the time. Described the truck. The license plate. Nothing came of it. But now? It matched. And suddenly, the question changed again. Was Sydney his first victim, or just the first the town noticed? In a final scene, Sydney's parents visit her memorial. Wind stirs through the tall grass. They speak to her. Out loud. With trembling voices. We love you, her mother whispers. We're still fighting. But the camera doesn't fade out yet. Because as police review the trailer again, they find a lockbox beneath the floorboards. Inside, notebooks, torn up photos, ASIM card, and a list of names. Half are female. One of them is crossed out. Another? Matches a current missing person case from 2016. It's a name the police never connected to Quake. Until now. This isn't the story of how Sydney Sutherland died. It's the story of how she was found. Of the trail she unknowingly left behind. And how a town full of good intentions missed the signs, again and again. August 20, 2020. Search teams fanned out across Jackson County. Drones swept farmland. Volunteers combed ditches, creek beds, tree lines. From the outside, it looked organized. But inside police headquarters, it was chaos. Sydney's phone had stopped pinging, but it had left breadcrumbs. At 3:31 p.m., it registered near County Road 41. At 3:35, the signal briefly moved east, unnaturally fast. Then silence. It suggested one thing, she wasn't moving on her own. But here's the key detail. Sydney's Apple Watch and phone didn't just go dark. They were turned off. Manually. At nearly the same time. The last digital trace came from a patch of farmland owned by the Llewellyn family. Investigators noted it. At the time, it didn't seem unusual. Quake Llewellyn's land stretched across thousands of acres. It bordered the running route. But when they asked him for an interview, something didn't sit right. He spoke quickly. Told them he saw her that day, waved from his truck. I was hauling rice, he said. Didn't stop. Didn't talk to her. His tone was casual. Too casual. Investigators asked for permission to search his truck. He said yes. And that's when everything changed. The forensic team pulled GPS logs from Quake's John Deere app. He didn't know the software logged movement every few seconds. It showed something odd. On August 19th, he'd taken a route off his usual path. He stopped his truck for exactly 12 minutes, at the precise location of Sydney's last ping. Then he drove to a back field. Stayed there for over an hour. He had lied. This wasn't a wave and go. This was contact. Detectives confronted him. He asked for a lawyer. Within 48 hours, they had enough to arrest him. At trial, prosecutors relied heavily on digital forensics, not graphic details. The truth was already unbearable. Sydney's family refused to sit through reenactments or speculative drama. Instead, The DA played a 3D map of Quake's GPS trail synced with Sydney's last phone ping. A slow, sickening dance of two signals intersecting, then one vanishing. They pulled cell tower logs. It showed. At 3:30 p.m., Quake's phone and Sydney's were within 30 feet. By 4 p.m., both devices had moved off-grid. By 5 p.m., his phone was back near the road. Hers wasn't. This wasn't theory. It was data. And it told the story better than any eyewitness could. Criminologist Dr. Elaine Vargas took the stand. She studied predatory behavior in rural communities. Quake Llewellyn didn't fit the stereotype, she said. That's what made him dangerous. He was awkward. Not aggressive. A guy who fixed tractors. Tended fields. Helped his grandma with groceries. But his social media told another story. He followed dozens of fitness influencers. His search history included location tracking apps, running forums. He wasn't impulsive. He was curious. Calculated. He watched, Vargas said. And he waited for the one time no one else would. The courtroom heard the confession. Not acted out. Not dramatized. Just read from court documents. Quake wrote it himself. I saw her running. I turned around. I didn't plan to do anything bad. But I got out of the truck and she looked scared. I panicked. But even that was a lie. Because by the time forensics got his truck, they found wiped seats, bleach traces, blood DNA on the door handle. He hadn't panicked. He'd prepared. He deleted call logs. Cleared browser history. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment accident. It was a cover-up. But amid the courtroom facts, the heartbreak lived outside the courthouse. Sydney's mother, Maggie, replayed her daughter's final voice message. She said she'd be back by dinner, Maggie whispered. That was the last time I heard her voice. Sydney's best friend, Lauren, pulled up an old Snapchat. Sydney jogging down that same road. Laughing. Saying, ain't nobody out here but me and the cows. And that was the problem. She'd felt safe. But she wasn't alone. Across Arkansas and beyond, women watched Sydney's case unfold. Runners in rural areas began carrying tasers. Personal alarms. A local reporter interviewed a group of women training for a 10K. One woman, Rachel, said, I used to listen to music while I ran. Now I keep one ear open. I text someone before I leave, and when I get back. Sydney didn't do anything wrong. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't out late. She wasn't drunk. She was just running. And still, she didn't come home. That's what terrifies women the most. But there's one moment that silenced the courtroom. It came not from experts, or cops, or prosecutors. It came from Sydney's father. He stepped forward during victim impact statements. I was proud of my daughter, he said. She was kind. Smart. Funny. She lit up our home. Then he looked directly at Quake. You took something you didn't deserve. And you tried to bury it like it was nothing. But she is everything to us. He paused. I hope every time the wind moves the fields, you remember her face. Quake never looked up. The case was closed. Quake Llewellyn pled guilty to capital murder and rape. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. But there was no relief. Because justice isn't the same as peace. The field where Sydney's body was found is now marked by a small cross. People leave running shoes, sunflowers, and notes. One reads, you should be here. But there's one final turn. A piece of evidence quietly entered the record after sentencing. A backup file from Quake's iCloud account. It contained location logs from 2019 and 2020. Police are still reviewing it. Why? Because it shows multiple trips to the same secluded spot weeks before Sydney vanished. And one chilling detail. A folder labeled CR41 created 2 months before the crime. Was this premeditated? Were there other targets? The sheriff's department hasn't said. But we've learned this, the case isn't over. Not for her family. Not for her town. And maybe, not for the justice system either. If you or someone you know feels unsafe while running or walking alone, visit, insert resources, for support. Let's keep each other safe. If this story moved you, if Sydney's voice mattered to you, then hit that subscribe button right now. We cover the cases that deserve to be heard, the ones buried in quiet towns and silenced courtrooms. Every share, every sub helps bring truth to light, and ensures these stories never disappear again. Subscribe for justice. Stay for the truth.